All right, without further ado, let me bring in the team that's going to break down all the big branding fails of the week. Emily Sturge from Campus Reform. She is the Gen Z reporter there and crushing it all over the place. Our good friend Caroline Downey at the National Review and the senior fellow over there at the Independent Women's Forum. And then back again is the author of this brand new book that we had on a couple months ago, the attorney from Judicial Watch, the former Trump attorney, and the author of Defiant, Inside the Mar-a-Lago Raid and the Less Ongoing Warfare, Christina Bobb. Always good to see you guys. Christina, congratulations again. Couple of weeks, big countdowns on to the book, right?
Yep, 2 weeks. Thanks, Sean.
All right, guys. And Christina, you're the attorney. So, although I don't know, I've never, Emily, are you an attorney?
I'm not. I'm excited to be the rookie on this show, though. I'm very excited to get into this.
All right, Christina, you're the attorney. I want to get some like President Trump this week talked about flag burning.
Yeah.
People's heads literally exploded and caught on fire. Here's the thing. I'm somewhat conflicted because I want to protect the First Amendment rights, even the stuff that I hate. But I think the president did this right. He went around, he kind of threaded the needle legally. Yeah. So where do you come down on this? Pro or con, how he did it?
Pro how he did it. I think he's exactly right. And the way he drafted his executive order, the way it was drafted, does not conflict with Texas v. Johnson, which was the 1984, the Reagan RNC convention. There was a protester. Why is it always Democrats burning the flag? But there was a protester protesting the Reagan administration, and the court ruled that there was no threat of violence, no actual violence. Nobody was even close to being harmed. It was just speech. Well, that's a very clear distinction from what we're seeing in a lot of these Democrat cities right now. There's a ton of violence, and it's very dangerous.
Burn it down! Burn it down!
And so the way they laid out this executive order really was to say, hey, we're not infringing on your free speech. If you want to go burn the flag, on a mountain by yourself and not incite anyone to violence, go for it. But we're saying if you're in the middle of the city, if you're trying to incite violence, and if you're trying to have disorderly conduct and incite disorderly conduct, or you're violating burn restrictions within the city, you're going to be prosecuted for that. And it's not a violation of your First Amendment right, because you don't have an unabridged First Amendment right. You have to follow the law. You can't scream fire in a burning building. Right. You can't, there are restrictions on the First Amendment, and this is one of them, and I think it's a good one.
Caroline, I'm pretty much a big, huge defender of First Amendment rights. Like, I think that that's the beauty of this. You actually defend what you abhor. But the thing that I've come to start to think about is what Christina was mentioning. If I stood in the middle of the street and started to burn newspapers, I'd get arrested. Lighting a fire in public is generally not something that's acceptable. And so is the question about burning the flag or burning anything, I mean, that to me is a danger.
Well, that was what was so brilliant and frankly strategic about this executive order, is that Trump did acknowledge the nuance. He was very consistent with the Supreme Court precedent, like Christina said. He said that if you burn a flag and it becomes incitement to violence, then you could be prosecuted. But in other cases of burning the flag, he said he's going to work with the DOJ, which is going to work with the Supreme Court, and what they have said about the First Amendment, which is that typically it's protected. Now, there's differences between vandalism, right, and what you personally do in private. So unfortunately, the BLM activists who painted those ridiculous murals across town and across crosswalks with the Pride activists, if someone were to desecrate that and it's private or public property rather, then I can see why, there might be law enforcement or even charges in those cases. But I think zooming out here, I think what Trump did at the end of the day, just like he did with the DC crime crackdown, is expose how politically gullible Democrats really are. They fell into the trap again, because with the DC crime situation, what they could have done is say, they could have said, hey, the National Guard is not a good long-term solution, but crime is bad. Trump objectively pointed out a real issue, but instead they denied that crime exists at all. They're doing the exact same thing with this, which is to defend burning the flag, which is very un-American, very unpatriotic, and it makes them look like they hate this country. But that's how far they'll go to try to, not give credit to Trump when credit is certainly due.
I'm going to give you credit. That the special effects, the sirens and everything just now, that was brilliantly timed. Emily, do young people care about this issue, and where do you think they come down on it?
Oh, I think back to the University of North Carolina fraternity brothers who hoisted up that flag. And let's talk about that. The attack on the American flag, we see that issue widespread on America's college campuses. And we reported at Campus Reform when the University of North Carolina boys did that, it was a result of the pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel protesters ripping down the American flag and replacing it with the Palestinian flag. And so it was exciting to see such young, patriotic individuals really defend their values on that day. But I think zooming out on this issue here, the irrefutable fact at the end of the day is when President Trump sees an issue, especially a law and order issue, he doesn't just sit around and talk about it like the left does. He actually does something about it, okay? For 4 years, the left said we couldn't do anything about the border. We just had to deal with it. And then we saw day one of the Trump administration, we saw a cleanup start immediately at the border. And now with the DC crime crackdowns taking place on cities across this country, we are seeing this administration really handle issues. Anti-Americanism, anti-Semitism, those are real world issues that university administrations, for instance, just weren't handling. When President Trump was first elected back in 2016, student protesters at American University burned a flag there. And you know what? The university said that it was a peaceful protest. They failed to stand up for common sense, for normalcy, for Americanism, and instead gave in to that leftist chaos. And so at the end of the day, we have a president standing up for law and order.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this conversation, but if you're looking for a way to get to sleep tonight and stay asleep, I've got the answer for you. For over a year, I've been taking Beam's Dream Powder. It has made a world of difference. I fall asleep faster, I stay asleep, and I wake up ready to go. If you want to join me by taking one scoop every night before you get to bed, go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code word Spicer at checkout for up to 40% off. Trust me, everything stems from a great night's sleep. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer, code word Spicer. All right, back to the conversation. And don't fall asleep yet. All right, I want to get into some branding things. And the first thing, obviously, last week, I can't believe it got overshadowed. I would have thought that this MSNBC to MS Now would have been the biggest branding failure. And then Cracker Barrel went out there and said, no, let us jump in the middle of this and show you how big of a thing. I'll start with you, Christina. The thing that I thought was interesting about Cracker Barrel is two things. Number one, they decided to modernize it. Every time I've ever gone to a Cracker Barrel, and I admit that it's been a while, like probably a year or so, there's never been a problem with they're packed. So what was the problem they were solving? And then number two, it had these undertones of wokeness. And they said when they rolled out the new logo, the CEO said, I'm hearing great things about this. And now we know that that was a lie because they've now issued a statement saying, we didn't listen to, it was like one of these non-apologies. Like, we didn't listen to you and we will now take your consideration. But is this sort of the next Bud Light where the damage has been done? Can Cracker Barrel fix itself? I don't know. Because I keep John Rich, my buddy down there in Tennessee, posted a picture and said, hey, the parking lot's empty. And that's never the case at Cracker Barrel.
Yeah, they can come back from it. President Trump truthed something out earlier this week saying, hey, Cracker Barrel, you've got a chance to come back from this. You can recover from this. You don't have to go down the Bud Light pathway. Don't double down. You got to turn things around, immediately instate the older logo, and go back to the Cracker Barrel roots. Hold a press conference, tell the American people, tell your consumers that you heard them, you're listening to them, you're making the changes. And, according to President Trump's Truth Post, he says you're going to have $1 billion of free advertising because everyone's going to be talking about how you listened to the American people, you listened to the consumer. And then he's basically like, yeah, but they're probably not going to do it. Good luck. Let's see what happens. And of course they're not. I mean, I think this is an example. The whole rebrand, let's get away from the Cracker Barrel image that we've had is an example of Democrats wanting to fix something that's not broken. And the Cracker Barrel was great. Everybody loved Cracker Barrel. You go to Cracker Barrel when you're ready for a big meal, a good meal, and they just blew it. And I think they can recover from it. I think President Trump's right, but I don't think they are because they doubled down. They came out and said, we hear you, we're sticking with it. It's like, all right, well, here we go.
Caroline, I feel like they could fix it, but everything that I've heard is that the CEO was warned that this was a bad idea, and she chose to go forward with this anyway. And you look at her history and the marketing firm, this is all what they did. And I feel like this is completely self-inflicted. and I'm at the point now in life where I feel like on the right, we should be voting more with our dollars. And so there are things like I choose, and it's not perfect. I will say this because I got, young kids and not everything, but I don't like buying Nike products. I feel like they're a hypocritical product. I don't like going to Starbucks. Not that I won't ever do it because sometimes that's where, but like I choose not to go to places because I don't want to support companies. And so right now, at least under the current leadership, I wouldn't go to a Cracker Barrel.
Yeah, and obviously the Sydney Sweeney situation showed the power of the American consumer in affirming the good, true, and beautiful.
Right.
I apologize for the New York City sirens. It's the noise seeps in no matter what you do. I wish Trump would send the National Guard here sometimes. I know he can't do that, but what I'll say about this situation is like, look, I know and I acknowledge that Cracker Barrel was struggling as a brand and the business model. The revenues were down. They were trying to find their relevance again. It's not like Cracker Barrel was everybody's, conversation. It certainly had kind of lost its luster. But when you're trying to modernize, or rather just find a new PR strategy, don't go back to the minimalism of 5 years ago. That is outdated. It's kind of cringe. Nobody wants that, especially Gen Z. I know Emily and I are both Gen Z. We're craving nostalgia. We actually like those types of interesting aesthetics and characters that have a lot of storytelling going on, and the history and heritage of Cracker Barrel was part of its appeal. And to erase that or just sterilize it and neuter it, I wouldn't go so far as to say as this is like some massive progressive conspiracy in the same way Bud Light was, which was such an egregious pushing of LGBTQ ideology down truckers' throats. I mean, the contrast there was so jarring because the clientele of Bud Light was these like average blue collar workers who would go to a bar. When it comes to Cracker Barrel, I would say a lot of Americans enjoy Cracker Barrel. It's like the favorite stop, like when you're on a road trip on vacation,
Yes.
like some like country time food. But it's not like they made the guy in the rocking chair gay. They just like took him out of the logo. But it's like, why'd they have to kill the old man? Why'd they have to kill him? That was my question. I think yeah.
That's it. And that was the thing, Emily, is that they tried to expand their brand. And at the expense, this is where there is a parallel to Bud Light. They were trying to grow the brand to new audiences, and they did it at the expense of their core audience, their core customers who loved going there, who felt that sense of nostalgia. And they were like, let's kind of wash this guy away. And it was petty. It was stupid. I mean, I get the update, and maybe what you could have done is focused on, making something about making it healthier or some other options. Cause, admittedly, Cracker Barrel is probably not the healthiest food you could be eating, but I felt like they did this whole thing at the expense of their core customer.
If you want healthy food, I don't think you should be looking toward biscuits and butter. But look, I think Cracker Barrel has time to course correct because the billboards down the Florida Turnpike still have Uncle Herschel on them. It's still the way that it's always been. And look, think about it. The people on the Florida Turnpike taking a step off to go to Cracker Barrel. It's families, it's normal everyday Americans, it's truckers, and Cracker Barrel really forgot their brand, their audience, their intended audience with this absolute marketing failure. What all of those people have in common, everyday Americans, they love tradition, they love order, they love normalcy. A lot of them are conservative, patriotic. And so a lot of everyday Americans are seeing this as an attack on tradition by taking Uncle Herschel out of the logo. And look, I'm up here in Washington, D.C. I've heard a lot of people say in D.C. and New York, why is this an issue? Why are we talking about it? Down south, friends and family, Cracker Barrel's an every Sunday thing after church. Cracker Barrel is childhood memories. It's nostalgia. And like Caroline pointed out, our generation loves nostalgia. And that's the connection with the Sydney Sweeney ad. American Eagle came out and said the Sydney Sweeney ad was their most expensive campaign ever, and it was a tribute to nostalgic Americana. It performed really, really well. We saw jeans flying off the shelves, and the stock market was surging. So we saw really positive results there. But when a company takes away that tradition, that sense of nostalgia, we've seen a decline just within the past few days.
Yeah, this better be like a big warning to Waffle House, guys. You don't need to do this. But Christina, I say this, but we're on the precipice, I think, of another big branding one. I read this story and I got a little concerned. I've always enjoyed Chip and Joanna Gaines. Sort of, I think they're a cute couple. They've always been identified. I don't know. I've never met either one of them, but as evangelical Christians, and they actually were getting criticized a lot by the folks in the left for some of the causes that they had supported or identified with. But then here's the thing. They did this thing that people on the right are now criticizing called roller jam. And it's a roller skating contest in one of their new shows that includes an LGBTQ activist as a host and an all LGBTQ roller skating team and a cross-dressing judge. The Gaines are the executive producers of this. And this is, again, why are you screwing with a very successful brand like this Magnolia brand that they have? They make a boatload of money. They're identified. I feel like they're going exactly the opposite way. They're like, let's figure out if we can reach out to the left, who pretty much says they hate us anyway, but let's kind of try to appease them. And all you're going to do now is piss off the right.
Yeah. This has been one of those things. I think conservatives are very forgiving. They or at least they have been historically. And when you see a lot of these home renovation shows, especially the HGTV shows, and I know Chip and Joanna Gaines have their own Magnolia Network now, and they have, they're not HGTV anymore, but that is where they made their start. The shows they push LGBT, elemental P on everybody in almost pretty much every show. It's just part of that package, and conservatives really haven't pushed back on it. And so I don't know, maybe Chip and Joanna Gaines think, hey, all our viewers, the people who already view us, haven't pushed back on it. And so maybe they will, maybe they won't. I think people who watch those types of shows probably don't like it, but aren't necessarily going to change the channel. I don't know. It's a gamble, but we see this a lot. I don't know what it is about home renovation shows, but like they love, for whatever reason, they love to push the homosexual agenda. So I don't know. I don't think this one will be as bad. It's unfortunate. It's annoying and frustrating, but I don't know that their core viewers are going to care because it has been happening for so long.
All right, Caroline, I want to move this branding effort into the political realm full on. The DNC was having its summer meeting this weekend in Minneapolis, and let's just show people how it started.
It's Lindy Somek, who is from the Saginaw Ojibwe Nation, and she's going to deliver our land acknowledgement today. Lindy.
Bonjour, Lindy Somek, Nindichinikas, Amekdodam, Saginaw Chippewa Dojaba, Anishinaabe Kwe and Dow. Good morning, DNC members, friends, and relatives. Let's talk about the land for a second. The DNC acknowledges and honors the Dakota Oyate, the Dakota people, who are the original stewards of the lands and waters of Minneapolis. The Dakota cared for the lands, lakes, and the Wapatonka, the Great River, the Mississippi River, for thousands of years before colonization. This land was not claimed or traded. It's a part of a history of broken treaties and promises. And in many ways, we still live in a system built to suppress Indigenous peoples' cultural and spiritual history.
Okay, Caroline, that's how they're starting with not the Pledge of Allegiance. Actually, I don't know that. In fairness, I don't want to. Maybe they did. I didn't watch the whole DNC meeting. I got to admit that.
I doubt it, Sean. They didn't start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I know, but they start with the land acknowledgement. I've never even heard of this. This is like, and then they get up there and she's a trans something Native American. I mean, it's like their goal is to figure out how many things that they can say they are, Caroline.
Yeah, I mean, this is what happens when you don't have patriotism or love of country. You have other cult-like followings or religious observances such as land acknowledgements. But I think this, in a nutshell, but there were many moments from this, it's only been a couple days of the DNC's meeting, but the number of quotable moments from the chair or from others who claim to represent the apparatus of the party really shows you just how hijacked and captured the Democratic Party is by the radical far left flank. They run the show. They set the agenda. It is not that they are this extreme fringe that has to be suppressed. Like, they are absolutely who's steering the ship, and they're going to steer the candidates, whether it's Zohran Mamdani, whether it's AOC. And I think it's quite unfortunate because the American people were very loud and clear in November that they reject the radicalism of the Democratic Party, the extreme, LGBTQ activism or DEI, all of that they're done with. We're done with wokeness, but the Democratic Party is tuning that out, saying we don't care. We're going to continue to push it anyway. And there was one other moment from Ken Martin that I remember that was just so fascinating to me. First, he says, we Democrats have to stop bringing pencils to a knife fight. And I thought that's really funny because you guys, you're schmucks. You are such schmucks. You keep falling for the number of political victories Trump has been able to achieve because he provokes the left to the most insane overreactions, whether it's on crime, which they should be able to say unequivocally, crime is bad. But instead, they were goaded very successfully by Trump into saying crime doesn't exist. Like, it's brilliant. It's brilliant how much they've dug themselves a hole. And the other thing that Ken Martin said was, we have to stop playing by the rules. We have to go on the offense against Trump. So besides the fact that they're making Trump their entire opposition, which doesn't really substitute for new good ideas, does it? It's like, oh, great, the same old. But since when have Democrats played by the rules? Since when? They tried to bankrupt Trump. They tried to imprison Trump. They did impeach Trump. I mean, they've operated outside the norms of politics for years. So, like, who are they kidding?
I'll tell you, when that statement came out that he said we've got to stop bringing pencils, I tweeted out, he further clarified his comments that all pencils previously used were from sustainable forests. Like, they can't, they're so triggered. But Emily, to Caroline's point about crime, this was another one of my favorite points that came up. Like, they literally not only can't just say, yeah, crime is wrong, they go this far. Take a listen.
Issues voters care about. Where does Trump go? Migrant crime, carjackings, the really lurid, awful stuff that is a crazy, crazy visual. Don't take the bait, because most Americans are more worried about how are we going to address mental health issues, the visible homelessness that we see on streets, and how do we deal with mental health and other issues that drive the sort of random incidents that scare all of us. That's what you should be talking about. That's where you should be focused. Don't take the bait in talking about migrant crime or carjackings or the things that actually don't matter to that many Americans.
Emily, I can't believe I'm going to ask this question, but I have to. Are you more concerned with visible homelessness or getting carjacked?
All of the above. I care about safety. I care about keeping our cities clean and safe. And that shouldn't be a partisan issue. And look, I disagree with those who are saying that the Democratic Party is in disarray, because they have laid their cards out. They've told us exactly what their values are. They don't care about American safety. They don't care about the American people. And then by beginning their meeting with this land acknowledgement, but mind you, it's a meeting where they should be discussing how they can better resonate with the American people. But instead, they kicked it off with a message of anti-Americanism. And to hone in on what that land acknowledgement is, that's something that we see in the education system all the time. School board meetings are starting with it. Student government meetings are starting with it. I witnessed it at my alma mater, the University of Florida. I witnessed a student government meeting beginning this way, where students decided to kick off their meeting by talking about how they're living on stolen land, and we needed to take a moment of silence for Native Americans. Look, these anti-American ideas they're not just at DNC meetings. They go all the way down to our education system, and it goes down to the anti-Americanism in our classrooms. Students are continuing. They're peddling this ideology. In George Mason University, for example, began freshman orientation with one of these land acknowledgements. The University of Arizona kicked off a football game with one of these land acknowledgements. We've been overlooking it for a long time, I think, just because it's so bizarre that we haven't paid much attention to it, but they're really springing up in the higher education system, and we need to talk about the erasure of American values that still is taking place.
Yeah, I don't mind. It's like these things come out of nowhere. Like, suddenly now we're talking about land acknowledgements, and again, I get certain tribes are going to be a little bit more into this issue depending on the relationship that they've had with the state that they're in or whatever. But this is sort of like these guys literally can make up an issue that I've never heard of like anyone else. Christina, though, it made me think that maybe part of the reason that they come up with all these other ideas is they don't want to get their members focused on like important things like winning elections. There was a story that came out in the New York Times. This is the headline: in private deal, the DNC covered $20 million in Harris bills post-election. Post-election. They're paying off. And by the way, just to put this in context, okay, she raised $1.5 billion and went into debt and then stuck the DNC with the bill. I get Ken Martin's like, what else you want to talk about? You want to talk about more land acknowledgement, Christina? Because I don't want to talk about the fact that we have no money. We're broke.
Yeah, and they want to be in charge of the national budget. I mean, they can't even budget for a 4-year, not even a 4-year, like an 18-month presidential campaign.
No, 107 days. Remember, she was
that's right.
Her book is called 107 Days. She blew $1.5 billion in 107 days and then went into debt. I mean,
that's impressive. Let's be real. That is an impressive way to blow $1.5 billion. I don't know what to say to that, honestly, because didn't she spend like $100,000? I think Alex Cooper said she spent $100,000 to be interviewed on Call Her Daddy, and they created a fake set to look like the original set. Like, it's every bad decision you could make, they made it. I mean, that's what it sounds like. So thank God. All I can say is thank God she's not in the White House.
Powerball is like 800 million right now or something like that. And I was thinking to myself, I don't know that I could blow that.
$1.5 billion. There's only like 330 million people in the United States. So they could have given over $1 million to every single American, which would have actually improved our lives. But they decided to light it on fire, I guess.
If you're a DNC member, how do you go to that meeting and say, Ken, can I just ask a question? We have $13 million cash on hand. The RNC is nearing $100 million, and we're talking about land acknowledgements. Don't we have a bigger problem here with the DNC? I mean, it's Caroline.
Yeah, they've learned nothing.
Right. But Caroline, I got to ask you a bigger question, though, because this is important. I know everyone's trying to figure out like what concerts to go to or what games. But if you're interested, there is tickets are now available for a conversation with Kamala Harris. Tickets are going for $72.66 all the way up to $400.72.91. Before you answer, I want you to know something, though, Caroline Downey. All fees are included in those ticket prices. So, I just, if that helps you answer the question, let me know which ticket you're interested in. I can go on the site right now and purchase it for you. But I don't get who's possibly going to go to this.
I don't really know the number you'd have to pay me to go. It's like pretty high, like to subject myself to that. Although, I mean, I think it'd be kind of revealing because it would be her unfiltered, right? And we didn't get a lot of unfiltered moments of Kamala Harris on the campaign trail because her team and handlers hid her from us on purpose. And when we did get those unscripted raw moments, we were all appalled. And honestly, that was the psyop of the century. So assuming she's not fed the questions beforehand, or there isn't some hidden teleprompter in the back or whatever, I think actually it would be a great research opportunity. How honestly shallow can a candidate get and make it 107 days because of media astroturfing? This is, again, the power of how mainstream media completely manufactured this, star out of thin air. So, yeah.
Emily, are you going to be attending any of these events, the live events? I actually think where I was hoping Caroline was goes, I want to know who does go there. Like if you went through this campaign and still want to go pay to do that, I think we should brand you. Like there should be you don't get to vote ever again. You watch the campaign and then you buy a ticket for this and we're like, okay, mark it down. Like you're done.
I would love to go to one of these events as an undercover journalist and start talking to attendees, ask them why they're there, and see if they actually have any reasoning for wanting to be there. Look, the American people voted to keep Kamala Harris out of the White House. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this tour is worldwide. I believe I read somewhere that she's even going overseas to promote this book. So the American people voted against her. She's having to resort to going overseas, which is problematic enough and funny enough in itself. It's pretty comical. I think the American people have been unburdened by what has been. Nobody is asking for this book, but I assume it will be a quick read of her political gaffes and all of her cringy moments.
Christina Bobb, you got a brand new book coming out in 2 weeks. Do you want to do a tour where you charge people tickets, $76? I don't know, but if you did it, I would just tell you should probably include all the fees, especially in the $400 tickets.
Yeah, that's a great note. Thank you. I probably will not be doing that, but I mean, the fact that she was the vice president less than a year ago, she was the vice president of the United States, and this is what she's resorting to. It's kind of cringe.
I don't mind her resorting to it, but I honestly do think, like, if you're like the book company, right? So who's buying that book? I don't get it. Like I Christina, you and I talked about your book coming out, and I'm like, you want to understand how that Mar-a-Lago raid went down and the legal intricacies. Like that's exciting. I want to hear about it. Like, I don't know what I want her to tell me. Like, she blew $1.5 billion. If you're going to tell me like how you blew that, maybe I would want to know, or who you're blaming for stuff. But like, I don't understand who actually will buy a book and then want to go hear her. Like, you've seen her.
Or who would even believe that she actually wrote it. I don't believe for a second Kamala Harris is capable of writing a book.
That's true.
I think she definitely has a ghostwriter, without a doubt. But I think the bigger question here is, how much of this book should we believe? Like, is this going to be an honest telling of that very short campaign? Because as we know, she was complicit in the conspiracy to cover up Biden's age. There's a lot of scandals that she's trying to save face with. And there were plenty of authors and operatives from the last White House that are releasing their own books. And presumably they would get the most buys and clicks because they actually are trying to expose what went on. I don't expect her to like expose herself more. I don't see it being honest.
You know, and I don't think we'll ever get the truth about how this book actually performs. I'm sure it'll be a New York Times bestseller. I'm sure it's going to bring in millions of dollars. Just like we don't know the truth about everything with the cognitive decline, everything with the cover up there. We are never going to learn how this book actually performs.
Actually, you know what, Emily, I'll push back on that for a second. I think that they might not tell the story. Like I think it's going to be an abject failure. I really do. I think the book and the event. But where I will agree with you is that there will be another cover up. That because BookScan is something that every publisher has access to. So at some point they can't hide it. But I think what will happen is it'll be like when Jim Acosta tried to have an event in DC. They'll just pretend like that no one will report on it is what'll happen. So that she won't sell any books and she won't sell any tickets, but they just won't report on it, right? So the cover-up will be that they'll ignore that it was an abject failure. I think that's where you're right.
Fantastic point. We shall see.
All right, getting back to crime for 1 second, there was a clip on Morning Joe that was just so epic to me, Caroline. It was. I don't give Joe Scarborough a lot of credit for. I mean, he's a performing artist at best, but watch him interact with the Chicago mayor when it comes to crime and just hear. I mean, we played that clip a moment ago about carjacking not being an issue, but here is the Chicago mayor on crime. Take a look.
Mayor, those all sound like great programs. I'm curious, would you also like to get federal funding to help put 5,000 more cops on the street in Chicago? Would that help drive down crime?
Well, look, policing by itself is not the full strategy.
No, I understand that. You've talked about the other things you want, and I said those are good and important programs, but I'm asking also, would 5,000 more police officers on the street in Chicago be helpful to go along with all of those social programs that a lot of cities are engaging in and having success with?
Well, look, here's the best way I can put it, Joe, is that in the 90s when I was in high school, we had 3,000 more police officers and we had 900 people being murdered every single year in Chicago. It's just not policing alone. Of course, we want more detectives.
I know it's not policing alone, but I know it's not policing alone. You've told me everything else you want. I'm curious, and this does come down to an ideological difference between people. Do you believe that the streets of Chicago would be safer if there were more uniformed police officers on the streets of Chicago?
I believe the city of Chicago and cities across America would be safer if we actually had, affordable housing.
All right, Caroline, there it is. That's the answer, Caroline Downey. If we just had more affordable housing, there'd be no crime. I don't know why any of us haven't figured this out yet. I feel bad that I didn't put my finger on the problem before. It's affordable housing that is responsible for all this crime. I mean, just so you know.
I'm surprised you didn't say that we need more drug centers where you can more easily inject yourself so that it's safe and controlled. Like, I mean, that's the next step, right? Is he's just going into, let's just accommodate the criminals a little bit more, and maybe then there'll be less crime because, you know, we've legalized crime. This is the folly of progressives, especially in these deep blue, violence-riddled places like Chicago, is they seem to think that community policing, or as Mom Downey would do, send a social worker out to negotiate with a madman on Fifth Avenue, apparently, that will somehow make quality of life better for residents here, when it's really just a euphemism for law enforcement with no teeth at all. Because what is the social worker going to do if the lunatic in the subway starts getting really aggressive? You know, are they gonna, start reading to them? Are they gonna like sing them a lullaby? Like you need lethality. You need the threat of force. Like, this is not rocket science, but these progressives keep trying to reinvent the wheel by thinking, well, we can reimagine policing to be more humane. It's like, no, more cops on the beat. Like, that is literally the answer. And that's actually why DC is in the mess that it's in right now. I know there's a lot of fear mongering about the National Guard and how they're going to have weapons. And, oh, this is so unprecedented of Trump to do. But the reason he did that is because, DC needed more cops, and they cut about 700 of them over the last few years because of ineptitude, just terrible management, and a stupid philosophy of law and order, basically, which is that, criminals we should accommodate them. But so that's why Trump had to step in, is because he knew that DC would not.
Christina Bobb, I think the problem is I didn't realize how forceful the tactics that the Democrats have up their sleeves. I want to show you this clip of how the Democrats are going to handle this, the kind of tactics and activities they are using, because they pushed back on Kilmar Abrego Garcia pretty hard, and this is what we're up against. Take a listen.
Kilmar is our neighbor. You can't have him, Trump. No! Kilmar is our neighbor. You can't have him, Trump. Heck no!
Yeah, just to be clear, Kilmar is our neighbor. You can't have him, Trump. That's what we're up against, Christina Bobb. Those, I don't know how we're ever gonna beat them on with those kind of songs. And by the way, just for everyone to know, that was Kenny Loggins. I'm a little disappointed.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that was Kenny Loggins. Wow.
No, neither did I. Someone pointed that out online.
Oh,
I'm a huge Kenny Loggins fan.
Yeah.
Danger Zone. There's so many good yacht rock songs, and then I hear Kilmar is our neighbor. Ugh.
Oh man, these people they've lost their minds. They just have absolutely lost their minds. They've lost their compass of true north, of what it means to love this country, to love law and order, and to love safe homes. I mean, the interesting thing about this, and I don't know, Kenny Loggins may be in this situation, I don't know. But when you have celebrities and famous people like this that have their own security and have, locks on their doors and gates at their house, it's easy for them to be like, oh no, don't arrest these people that are, vandalizing and scaring people and doing violent crime. That's so bad. And then they go to their safe communities at home and, they live in suburbia. It's a disservice to the community. It's a disservice to the people who are committing the crimes, because a lot of these are kids who I suspect probably don't want to be career criminals, but they don't see a future right now where they can thrive. Unfortunately, I think America has been ravaged by bad policies, particularly over the last 4 years. But with the imbalance of trade for so long, Donald Trump is trying to fix that. But I think the younger generation is concerned about their future. And so some of them are resorting to crime. And then you get Kenny Loggins in a hot pink vest saying he's our neighbor. And that doesn't help anything. Yeah. So.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.